You should always place your Barbarian at the back of the board. Confused? Hear me out. Hello everyone, my name is Shumei and today I'm going to give you a tutorial guide on how to use and counter the Barbarian. It can wreck through an entire push if it's not countered correctly, but it can be eliminated in a flash if the enemy doesn't use it right. Now before I go on, I want to thank all these people for helping me on this video with some ideas. Now please like and subscribe and let's get started straight away. Okay, now let's start with how to use the Barbarian. As I said in the intro, you should place your Barbarian at the back row, at the third or the fourth row. This might seem counterintuitive because you want your Barbarian to attack the quickest, but this is actually a very useful trick, especially against Archer Queen decks, because you want your Barbarian to be the last to get to the enemy melee troops, because you want the enemy to target your tank instead of the Barbarian, so the Barbarian can do all the damage dealing work. If you place your Barbarian at the first row, right at the center, all the troops is just going to target the Barbarian and the Barbarian is just going to get destroyed. It's going to get clapped and it won't be able to charge up its hit speed. So if you want the Barbarian to do better in the long term in the match, you should place it at the back row so it can get the most value over a sustained period of time. You can also use the Barbarian as a cage troop in earlier rounds against the miner. You can use it in this formation or this formation. The cage is very great against the miner, but I would not recommend using this at later stages because usually miners will be upgraded to their third star, which is the cleave ability, and if they have the cleave ability, it would still attack the nearby range troops along with the Barbarian. So this would be amazing at earlier rounds. If you want to know more about the cage strategy and how to counter the miner, you can check out this video where I explain everything. Now let's move on to the upgrade order for the Barbarian. So I would recommend going for the second star ability first, which makes it so that its attacks have a small chance of dealing one more damage. This is great at earlier rounds because the other two abilities requires some kind of a build up over a sustained period of time, but this ability can be used very effectively at the earlier rounds as well. So the second upgrade you should choose is the third star ability, which makes it so that the rage of the Barbarian stacks infinitely. This is mostly the reason why we see the Barbarians hitting super quick. It hits like crazy quick, like a machine gun. I would recommend upgrading at later stages of the game because at earlier stages there are not a lot of troops, so there is not a lot for the Barbarian to increase its rage. But in later rounds, when there are more troops in the board, it can easily build up its rage to a crazy amount. Keep in mind, upgrading Barbarian to 3 stars is super useful, it's super worthy, so it's really worth your elixir. So if you want to upgrade his last star too, it will be very useful too. And speaking of his last star, that is a boast ability and it gives him 1 extra damage for a short period of time. Again, this is really useful at later stages where the Barbarian can just shred through enemy troops and get that boast ability very quick. This order, I would say, applies to really any scenario, applies to any hero that you're using, and this order is especially good against Shield Maiden and the Barbarian King. Okay, now let's look at what troops goes well with the Barbarian. Firstly, Shield Maiden could be a good combo, or really any other tank such as the Mega Knight, because those tanks can tank for the Barbarian. So if you want to use it with a tank, you should place your tank at the middle, at the center, at the first row, so that all the enemy troops target the tank instead of the Barb, so the Barbarian can just shred through enemy troops without getting targeted. This applies for the Barbarian King as well. So if you've got a Shield Maiden or Barbarian King deck, you should definitely use the Barbarian. The Barb also goes well with the Archer for a frontline backline strategy. While the Archer tries to take out the backline units, Barbarian takes out the frontline unit. It is a great strategy. Other things that pair well are the Prince, which can knock back enemy tanks so that your Barbarian doesn't get destroyed as quickly, and also the P.E.K.K.A, which can help you get rid of the frontline enemy units if they actually targeted the Barbarian. Okay, now let's move on to how to counter the Barbarian, because I know it's annoying to see the enemy Barbarian to just wreck through your push. I know, it is so obnoxious. Really, any minis that have a stun ability are great against the Barbarian, such as the Mega Knight, the Musketeer, and the Giant Skeleton. I would highly recommend the Mega Knight against it because its stuns are very consistent and it's also a tanky unit, so the Barbarian won't just get through him very quick. These stun troops, it basically makes it so that the Barbarian cannot attack, it makes him vulnerable. So that is why stun troops are so valuable against the Barbarian. Another hero that's great against it is the Shield Maiden. Because the Shield Maiden has the block reflect damage super, that makes it so that when the Barbarian hits the Shield Maiden, when the Shield Maiden has her super, the damage will just go back to the Barbarian and the Barbarian can be shredded very quickly. So if you are finding any trouble facing against the Barbarian, maybe consider switching to a Shield Maiden deck, because if you do, your life would be a lot easier. The third troop that I think is really interesting against the Barbarian is the Wizard, especially with 2 stars. Let's rewind to earlier in the video. You want the enemy to target your tank instead of the Barbarian, so the Barbarian can do all the damage dealing work. See there? So the range units will target the tank instead of the Barbarian. And this actually doesn't affect the Wizard very much though, because the Wizard has a splash damage, and the Wizard splash will just go from the tank to the Barbarian. So this could be actually a very effective way to counter Barbarian, because the Barbarian will just stand close to the tank. So when the Wizard is targeting the tank, it will target the Barbarian at the same time. I find this strategy very interesting and very useful, so you should definitely try this if you got a Wizard on your deck. And let's say if this video hits 20 likes, I'll do another tutorial video covering another mini. And be sure to check out the server in the description below. There are lots of fun tournaments and very cool people there. So this is it for the video. I hope you enjoyed this. My name is Human, and peace